So I get early access to Kinich, and I'll be honest, he is the goofiest character ever. From the way his skill works, and sometimes fails to work in a hilarious way, to the weirdly powerful damage he can output, although it is limited by a very specific factor. And then finally we have this thing. Ahau, the pixelated dragon companion. Seriously, what is up with this sus-looking Sasuke wannabe? Oh wait, he's also voiced by the same person? Anyway, in this video, I'm gonna review and showcase Constellation Zero Kinich. I'll compare him to some other units because why not? And we're gonna take a look at his damage potential as well as which teams he excels in. But at the same time, I'll also point out some of the problems I've had with his playstyle and share my honest thoughts about him so that you can decide for yourself if he's worth pulling for. Before we start, as a quick disclaimer, the footage you're about to watch is from the Creator Experience server, so content shown here is subject to change. Now, with that out of the way, I'll be showcasing several weapons throughout this video, but the main one is going to be the new Natlan craftable Earth Shaker, while the artifact set is going to be the Obsidian Codex, and his talents are raised to level 9. So, what does this guy do, really? Well, to put it simply, his playstyle is completely different from every Genshin character. You tap the skill, and if there's an enemy nearby, he will shoot his grappling hook, attach himself to the foe, enter the Night Soul's Blessing state, and then for 10 seconds, while the skill lasts, you start playing a minigame, where the goal is to build up this bar as fast as possible, because once it's full, by tapping the skill again, he unleashes Scale Spiker Cannon attack. But I'll just call it a big shot since it has a massive multiplier. But I mean, you can already see the huge damage numbers here as well. Now, on the flip side, when you're exploring the world with him, his skill acts as a grappling hook. It actually has a couple of really cool things I like about it. First of all, you can use it mid-air, which is already a big win for me. But then you can also hold down the skill button and aim where you want to launch him. In fact, you can do this mid-air and keep him suspended before shooting off. And then if you're in Natlan region, he can fire off 2 grappling hooks. The second one will be using up the Phlogiston resource, and then you can also use his hook when switching from a different teammate, like when you're in mid-air or fighting. But compared to someone like Kazuha, the distance Kinich covers vastly power creeps the samurai boy. I mean, to be fair, Kazuha's skill doesn't launch him in a trajectory. He basically just goes up, while you cannot remain in same place after using Kinich's skill, since it's more like an arc trajectory. But for exploration purposes, even outside of Natlan, his grappling hook just feels really good. Although, funnily enough, he cannot apply Denjo with the skill on objects if there are no enemies around. So it is a bit of a nuisance. You have to use his burst in order to trigger some Denjo puzzles or interactable objects. Oh, and if you're asking why not compare him to Xinyan instead, well, she cannot use her skill mid-air, so what's there to talk about? I mean, okay, if you time her triple jump, it will cover more distance from the ground, but that's pretty much it. Now, he also has this special mid-air attack you can use right after the grappling hook, but I'll be honest, I think it's only there to troll you. Out of many attempts I've made, I think I've managed to hit an enemy like twice out of like, what, 50 times? Seriously, look, I'm literally trying to hit this dumb thing right here, and it doesn't register the hit mid-air, and this happens so many times. So basically, treat this as a fun way to torture yourself, at least if you're struggling the same way as me. And speaking of pain, let's talk about the whole pigeonholing situation. You see, normally I'm a cool guy as I can keep my cool and I won't get enraged, but man, I've experienced a stroke trying to prove something, and that is how many big shots I can get without any help. You see, if I just go solo without teammates against the poor Drake, as much as I try, the best I can do are 2 big shots. It always happens so that the moment I can trigger the 3rd big shot, the skill's duration is over. And even when I try to do this challenge with a stationary target, like Regivine here, even then, so close, yet I still cannot achieve the 3rd big shot. But then I realized, if you read the burst carefully enough, using it during the skill actually extends the skill's duration by 1.7 seconds, which ironically is barely enough to finally fire off the 3rd big shot. Because here's the thing, I don't want to get too much into the details, but you can generate the points for the bar with the following ways shown here. Although in a nutshell, what you really want to do is just tap the skill, attach yourself to an enemy, and then locate this blind spot as the game calls it. Spam the normal attacks and hold down either left or right to slide in the direction towards the blind zone, which helps fill up the bar much faster when you reach it. And then once the bar is full, fire off the big shot and travel to the next new blind zone that appears. But I'm telling you, if you don't use the burst in the middle of the skill, I don't think you can get 3 big shots. or maybe it's my ping or skill issues at work here. However, I am only mentioning this because if you play him in teams without a pyro unit, like for example Hyper Bloom or Quicken, then just expect this weird drawback. Now, why did I put emphasis on a pyro unit? Well, let's just say Kinich got pigeonholed pretty hard. See, his first passive states that when using the skill, if the enemy is burning or affected by burgeon damage, he will gain 7 points for his Night Soul bar, and you need 20 to fire off the big shot. So that's a lot of points you can generate very fast. In fact, with a pyro unit, it is extremely easy to pull off 3 big shots, and then you have enough time to fire off the 4th big shot as well. Supposedly, you can also achieve 5 big shots, but it's extremely luck and enemy and situation dependent. However, the pyro glorification doesn't end just yet. Earthshaker states that when a pyro-related reaction is triggered by anyone in the team, Kinich gains 32% skill damage bonus for 8 seconds at max refinement, and long story short, this bonus translates to about 20% extra damage you can deal when it's active. So you definitely want a pyro unit on the team when using this weapon. Same goes for his signature. Well, to be honest, you can use it without a pyro teammate, but it's gonna be much slower to fully utilize the passive. So in other words, you also want a pyro teammate when using the signature. Also, check out these wacky stats on the signature. I think this is the first weapon in the game to have a measly 11% critical rate and a massive base attack. Anyway, point is, if you want to experience the best personal damage Kinich offers, you definitely want to go with a pyro teammate because otherwise, you'll be missing out on extra big shots which make up the majority of his damage output, and some weapons will be inferior as well. Now, since we're on the topic of damage, how good is it? Well, by flying solo, it's decent I guess. Roughly 365,000 damage over 13 seconds when using both the skill and burst, and that's when he's equipped with the Earthshaker. However, if I use him in a team with Benny Boy and someone who applies Deepwood, plus let's throw in Zhongli's shield as well, then he ends up achieving about 725k damage, so almost double the damage, which means he scales pretty well with buffs. And if I repeat the same rotation with his signature Fang of the Mountain King, he ends up dealing about 19 to 24% more damage when compared to Earthshaker, which is not the worst power difference. However, there are some things I want to point out. So I've noticed when optimizing his damage output, the Obsidian Codex 4 set actually only starts providing the massive 40% critical rate when the Night Soul points are consumed, which is funny because this naturally happens with Milani the moment she gets onto the surfboard, but in Kinich's case, he actually needs to fire off that first big shot to consume all the points. Now for my own testing, I believe the critical rate is applied before the first big shot connects, but don't quote me on that. However, I believe that's the case, since another big part of his kit is the second passive talent, which applies a massive 320% multiplier to the big shot whenever anybody in the team triggers Night Soul Burst, which is when a team has Natlin unit and anyone deals elemental damage at fixed intervals. In fact, you can get 2 stacks of this passive, but in the current typical teams, the realistic outcome will be just 1 stack at the start of each rotation. Still, the damage increase is very significant. With 1 stack, it's 27% more damage, and with 2 stacks, it's a whopping 55% increase. But I guess now it makes sense to use his burst after the first big shot, so it can start benefiting from the increased critical rate. Still, the other thing I have a little bit of beef with is the grappling hook itself. I'm sorry, but it's just really janky sometimes. Yeah, you can choose the direction where you want to slide, left or right, but often you will end up behind some objects, and this messes up the camera's angle. Or he will slide in a weird way, like outside of the range of his hook, and this mostly happens with a big moving enemy. Or someone like this new red dragon boss just refuses to let you slide past him. Again, to me it's kind of funny, but I guess if you want to break new ground with a unique mechanic, some eggs need to be cracked for the omelet. Now, I guess I should briefly mention his burst. He will summon a bigger version of a How for 15 seconds, and it will deal decent amount of damage, like about 11k unbuffed and roughly 20k with buffs. So, not a lot. Basically, there's the first initial hit, and then he will fire a laser 6 more times. I mean, the burst costs 70 energy, and as far as I'm aware, he only generates like 5 particles after the first big shot. So because the damage isn't amazing, it's there to mostly compensate compensate his lack of AoE potential because it's very limited. Like, you can aim the big shot of the skill by holding down, although then you're wasting precious time by doing this. But the big shot can hit multiple enemies, even if it's not gonna be super often. Either way, the amount of motion value the burst provides essentially is about as much as one big shot. So again, you don't need to build energy recharge on Kinich, at least in my opinion, and just use it whenever it's available, provided the best time to do it would be after the first big shot for the reasons I explained previously. But yeah, that's pretty much it when it comes to this Hoyo Sasuke's gameplay. Now, I want to talk about his team comps. Okay, so I said he definitely wants to be in a team with a pyro unit, but what if he isn't? Is it really that bad? Honestly, not really. See, the cool thing about his whole grappling hook shooting shenanigans is that while the overall damage is treated as skill damage, the smaller shots are treated as normal attack animation. So this means characters like Xingqiu, Yelan, and so on, their bursts can be triggered, which is amazing to be honest. For example, against this random named enemy, I am using the classic Hyperbloom team of Nahida, Cookie, and Xingqiu. It's honestly really simple. You set everything up with those three, and finally swap to Kinich, and start shooting and applying Hydro, so that blooms can be produced, while Kinich is still dealing decent damage by himself. Now, I will say, because Cookie's ring is on Kinich, and he ends up keeping a distance from the enemy, the blooms that drop on the ground sometimes might not be picked up by Cookie's ring. So in that case, you either cry, or use Raiden Shogun to consistently trigger the Hyper Blooms, but then cry because nobody's healing you unless you put Prototype Amber on Nahida. On the other hand, there's also Quicken teams, and I'll be honest, they are not the worst for Kinich, but I would then use something like Serpent Spine or any of the other 5-star stat stick weapons, since the signature or Earth Shaker's powerful passives are wasted here. Well, I mean, if you have the signature, it's still really good even for this team, but you get the idea. Fine, jeez, let's talk about the pyrocentric teams now.
Okay, so what you want to do is use Benny Boy.
I know, shocking, nobody could have thought of that. But I will say, you know the whole meme about circle impact when using Benito here? It is much more prevalent when Kinich is trying to utilize that big attack buff, since not only does he actively move around and try to get to the blind zone ASAP, but the enemy might move too far away from it. And then you end up in this wacky situation where you drop Benny's buff, and then seconds later you're too far away from it because the enemy is running around and you're chasing its blind zone like crazy. However, usually it will be fine, and on the bright side, you don't immediately lose the buff when you exit Benny's circle. I believe it lingers for like a second or so before fading away, so this might give you enough time to get back into the circle. And honestly, you really just want to be inside it when firing off the big shot anyway, since it's the most important damage of his kit. Okay, so Benny and Kinich. Who else? Well, the most natural choice would be Emily. She works super well here because she also benefits a lot from a burning target. The last slot is kind of flexible. It could be Xiangling, for example, although I would say giving her Deep Wood set isn't the worst idea here since Emily can out-damage her in this specific team, or it could be Kachina with the new Scroll of the Hero of Cinder City artifact set, or Albedo/Chiori for some Geo damage, or Geo Daddy himself, or even Dia. Thing is, Kinich has great resistance to interruption when using the skill, but he can still get interrupted during his crazy shooting, so it's not the worst idea to use a Shielder or Dia. Now, if you do want to see the biggest damage potential, obviously there's Furina and Benny duo. But because of how much Hydro Furina applies, the last slot is usually best reserved for a Pyro unit. Since remember, if the enemy is not burning or burgeoned actively, he will generate Night Soul points much slower. And I guess the last thing that leaves us would be Burgeon team comps that I've tried. I mean, going with the usual Toma, Nahida, and Xingqiu or Yelan composition is pretty safe. It's fun. Kinich works well, but keep in mind, Toma shielding might not be enough to keep the team alive, so considering something like Prototype Amber and Nahida might be worth it. And then, if you want the best of both worlds, but with not the most reliable consistency, you could go for Overload Quicken teams. Here, you can amplify Kinich's damage with Quicken reactions, and he still gets to benefit from Pyro reactions to help him achieve fast, big shots. Still, keep in mind, it's not super consistent, but I hope this will be addressed with the Pyro Archon, hopefully. Oh, and by the way, I was not allowed to record Abyss footage, but I did test out all of the teams, just so we're clear about this. My name is Sasuke Uchiha, and he wants to restore his clan, but all he got was this weird pixelated dragon. Anyway, what do I think about Kinich? honestly, if you're fine embracing the janky nature of his skill, I think he's a pretty awesome unit. Just like Mulaney, he works super well with the new Natlan's craftable weapon, and I would say it's its best free-to-play choice. Also, despite the fact you're being nudged quite harshly to play him in teams that have a pyro unit, he can still function pretty well in teams like Hyperbloom or Quicken. But his bread and butter will still be comps with a pyro unit. I mean, it's funny to see how both him and Mulaney actually need a good pyro off-field applicator. And this makes me believe even more that the Pyro Archon is going to provide some kind of a solution for their problems. Still, I would say right now, if you're on the fence, just wait until the 5.1 livestream, and hopefully next early previews of 5.1 characters some of us content creators get to do, so you can decide for yourself if you want to pull the trigger for Kinich. I personally started off by disliking his playstyle, but once I got the hang of the way his skill works, and accepted some of the quirks of it, I don't know, I'm honestly having a lot of fun with him. So yeah, hope you found this video interesting, and if you want to keep my channel alive, make sure to press the like button on this video and subscribe to me because, well, I have no good argument, just help me please. Anyway, thanks for watching and see you next time.